Hey everyone, I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about why 2025 is possibly the best time to escape the 9 to 5 and start your consultancy. Yes, there's a lot of craziness that's happening in the market at the moment, but there may be some potential opportunities that you can capitalize, especially if you've been dreaming of this future for yourself. Again, have you ever felt like you're meant for more than your 9 to 5, but you don't quite know where to begin? Hopefully, this video answers some of that stuff for you. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell for more topics centered around portfolio careers, contracting, and consulting. If you don't know who I am already, my name is Michael Tabirade, an independent management consultant and founder of the consultancy, The Mastery Group. So let's get into it. Let's explore what breakthrough you may need in order for you to thrive when it comes to setting up your consultancy. So the first thing is it time for you to recalibrate? What do I mean by this? Now, the reality is a lot of us are feeling burnt out. We're feeling restless. We're feeling like just lethargic, if I'm honest with you. You know, I spoke to my cousin the other day and they were talking about how they feel like they want to quiet quit. And I've been there. I know exactly what that feels like. Quiet quitting can lead to burnout, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to frustration, it can lead to all of this stuff, especially when you have individuals such as line managers who don't necessarily value you as an individual. How? When it comes to changes in personal circumstances, they don't care. When it comes to all of the hard work that you've done, they don't care. And the argument could be made that number one, they've been brought in due to nepotism, or maybe number two, they're going through it themselves, so they don't even know how to lead. They have no idea. There's so many demands from a stakeholder standpoint, from a senior management standpoint, from an executive standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, because the global community has become extremely competitive. So there's so much going on. The other thing is that because of all of this stuff, you may not necessarily feel aligned to what it is that you're doing. And therefore, because you don't feel aligned, you feel like, what is the point of me doing what I'm doing? You know, when I first did coaching for the first time, I got trained. You know, the trainer, who's a great person as a coach, you know, they were saying to me that there are four ways in which we are driven. It's either based on what is meaningful, what we can achieve, what we can learn, or what gives us joy. And usually we are aligned to two of those things. And, you know, in for many of us, in the places that we're at right now when it comes to the 9 to 5, we're not fulfilled because we're not getting that deeper sense of meaning. We're not getting that sense of joy. We don't feel like we're being pushed to a certain point where we're achieving the things we want to achieve, or we're not learning the things we want to learn. So you have to think to yourself, are you getting that stuff? And if so, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best and 1 being poor, what does it look like for you? The other thing is, if you stay where you are, you'll stay stunted, I'm telling you. And I learned this early on. When I was working as a commissioning officer, I decided to basically move around. I decided to work for the contracts team to learn about how contract management worked, how performance management worked, what was the rules and policies centered around all that stuff. I decided to do project management, work on a digital transformation, one of the first of its kind within London when it comes to child health implementation. I decided to learn all these different things, which gave me the sort of like escalation, promotion, development that was required in order for me to succeed and eventually move on. And so you may feel like you're in a position where you're feeling stuck. You're feeling like you can't really move on. And this is what we don't want. And so where are the cracks in the traditional 9 to 5? What does it look like? Well, the reality is no one's loyal these days. No one is loyal. I think there was a stat probably about 5 to 10 years ago that highlighted that millennials move jobs at least on average 8 times. That's the average. Wonder what the sort of like high rate or number is, what the high frequency looks like. You've got Gen Zers who are like, I'm not even going to bother working a 9 to 5, whatever it may be. I'm going to focus on doing my own thing. This is why they're ballsy when it comes to sort of like business endeavors and all that kind of stuff. And so with all of this in mind, loyalty is not there. And organizations know this. This is why they're scrambling, trying to create the right sort of like culture and environment so that people feel more included and more communal within a space. But it's not going to work necessarily for everyone. Of course, benefits keep people where people are, and also the culture does based on leadership. But again, there are many different things that come to mind. The other thing to note is that obviously technology is disrupting things, namely AI, automation, the development of tools that are basically doing the heavy lifting. You've got AI doing sort of like junior coding stuff and building websites in like 30 seconds or a minute. or basically doing design stuff. You see what ChatGPT can do. You see what Gemini can do and Notebook LM can do. It can do massive amounts of research or extraction, summarization, accumulation, all of this different stuff, generating sort of like pictures and it's just mad. There's so much. And so this is why you see partners and principal consultants and others alike who are leaving top 4, top 5 consultancies and starting their own things because they understand the procurement rules. They understand all of the things in order for them to set up as a consultancy. Why can't you do that too, especially if you have the skill set and that's already been demonstrated already based on what you're doing already? What I will say is if you're looking to do any sort of consulting or contracting, do something you've done before already or something that is transferable or you've done deep sort of like practitionership in. You've practiced, you've studied, you've understood. Like, don't just, oh, let me try that. Like, no, we're not doing that. Let's be sensible here. If you've done project management and you've worked within the environment space, you could set up a consultancy as an environment project consultant. For sure. There are things like this that exist, but it takes work to understand what the market looks like. And the final thing I want to say is there is a deep values clash I spoke about at the beginning. You know, I remember one time where I was working for a certain organization and there was toxic leadership. I always say this example. And you know what? I just thought I can't do this no more. This is what pushed me into contracting and consulting because I realized that actually this is not important to me. This doesn't align to who I am. It doesn't resonate. Yes, I could bear some stuff, but this does not resonate. I need to do something else. I've done that at least twice in my life and it's the best decision I've made. Whether it meant I was going into a safe haven or not. So sometimes you just need to do that. But these sort of like value clashes and these forms of poor leadership and toxic environments are heavily pushed by the fact that resources are low, capacity is low. There is low sort of like expertise when it comes to what leaders need to know due to nepotism, people being brought in just because they know somebody, but not because they have the skills and competencies. And so this is why as a consultant or contractor, it pays to be competent because they're bringing you in for that reason. And so people want to prioritize their future life, their health, and all of that kind of stuff over what they're getting right now. That's where people are at. And so why is 2025 a strategic opportunity? Well, one of the things that it doesn't mention here is the fact that procurement rules have changed within the UK, meaning that there is opportunities for small, medium enterprises, SMEs, to capitalize and become more competitive with the big four and so to jump on board with certain contracts when it comes to more of a conservative contracting or consulting approach. So you can take on bigger contracts. Look up Procurement Rules 2023 and you'll get more information centered around that. There's obviously, and there's more opportunity for people to find contracts or consulting gigs on open marketplaces. I say they're open because anyone can apply, but sometimes these things are difficult to apply for. And so you need to find, you can use Perplexity or ChatGPT or whatever it may be, you need to find these marketplaces that are aligned to your niche so that you can sort of jump on board with this stuff. Maybe you just want to jump on something like Appwork. You start off with that. You know, I remember watching a video about a guy who became a specialist within a space of helping people set up their Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365. Help them do all of that stuff. And so he ended up making $750,000 US doing that over a number of months because he was the go-to person, or at least he presented himself that way. And so maybe there's a marketplace that makes sense for you. You need to be able to speak to the right people, and we'll come over to that in a second. The other thing to mention is that we're in a consultancy-friendly era. Why do I say this? Well, the evidence suggests, at least in the UK, based on the Trust report, that from 2017 to 18 to 22 to 23, there's been an increase in spend of consultancy spend, okay? What does that really mean? Like, at least local authorities, blue light sort of like organizations like the ambulances and the police, the government, other sort of organizations have wanted to bring in contractors and consultants. Why? Because there's pressure to basically implement changes that may not be able to be done at the rate or speed with current workforce. Remember, even though there are tight budgets, in some ways you could argue with consultants and contractors, with the right type. I'm not talking about the big four. I'm talking about more solo contractors, consultants, smaller teams. It may be cheaper on the long term because they're not paying for, you know, benefits, pension, all of this other additional stuff. So there's that to bear in mind. Like, we're in an era where, yes, you may see people talking about tax the rich and this and that, but consultants may not necessarily sit within that space. It depends on what you're doing, what your aims are, what your focus is. You're still contributing to society, whether you're taxed by your limited company and or you're doing inside IR35 contracting. Maybe inside IR35 contracting is the way you start. That's the way I started, at least anyway. And you may flip back and forth between the two. Eventually, you can start doing your own freelance stuff completely. The other thing is, because there's so much change, because tech has disrupted things and created democratization, we're in a position now where niche is important. I know there are people saying that, okay, you know, you can be yourself and all that kind of stuff there. I fully believe that. But that comes based on the fact that you are the niche. And what has represented you as the niche is the things that you've been able to do or talk about. So for me, that comes down to, let's say, in a more programmatic standpoint, program management standpoint, digital transformation, the NHS, healthcare, governance, risk, all of that kind of stuff there. Planet, like, this is all associated with me within the world of conservative consulting, outside of IR35 contracting, etc., etc. That is my niche. Outside of that, okay, and this is where you are the niche comes into play. Outside of that, to you and maybe other people, it may be talking about portfolio careers, talking about contracting, like whatever it may be. And so who you speak to and how you articulate yourself becomes really important. The other thing to note, to mention, is that because you are smaller, there is an opportunity for you to be more agile and solve the problems quicker. Think about it. ChatGPT was released, I think there was a version in 2020 and before that, but it was fully a thing 2021, 2022, I don't remember. Let's say 2022. It's taken time for big organizations to even adopt this stuff. Look what Donald Trump has spoken about. I think it's Project, I don't remember what the project's name is, but he's looking to spend 500 billion on AI in the government sector. 500 billion. That is a lot of money. Whilst they're setting things up and, you know, working with Oracle and OpenAI and other places and Nvidia, you've got the small person who's solving some problems already on a smaller scale for some of these government organizations, consultancies, etc., etc. So you're more agile by nature if you put in the work now. And so there is power in developing a portfolio career. You know, I'm biased towards that. A portfolio career is the thing that you create as opposed to the thing that you pursue. This is really important. We know there's been a rise of portfolio careers, at least from even the mid-90s. Okay, you know, I've forgotten his name, but it's something Hoffman, the guy who originally co-founded LinkedIn. He basically set up LinkedIn for that reason, because he understood that people needed to put their digital footprint, their digital profile out there so people could understand who they were and provide them more opportunities. Whether it's working or not, some people say yes, some people say no, but it's doing its thing for sure. LinkedIn has climbed the ranks in terms of a social media, okay, or a platform that is important for professionals. Whether we can articulate why, that's a different story, but of course we can. But in many instances, it's become important. It's because the portfolio career is rising. We're understanding that we have to be in a position where we can sort of like develop this personal brand where people can understand this is about articulation. And so when we think about all this stuff, we have to also put ourselves in a position of strength. How do we do this? We understand the market. Okay, how do you understand the market? You speak to different individuals within the space that you're looking to get into. Agents, consultants, contractors, your target audience. Try to understand their sort of issues, their challenges, their problems, how you can sort of like pivot in order to cater towards that. You also make sure that you actually do the research. Okay, so maybe you look at white papers or reports that are developed by the big consultancies to understand how you can sort of like know where to sort of like focus on. Maybe you go onto marketplaces such as CV Library or Upwork or Juno as an example to see what's out there, and then start to sort of develop your profile aligned to that stuff. You have to improve your CV. You have to improve your profiles online and offline. You have to provide examples and testimonials of where you've been able to support. Okay, where you've been able to deliver. PAR, remember, problem, action, result. What problems have you solved? What actions did you take aligned to a known methodology for that audience? And what results did you produce? Tangible ones. Did you make money? Did you save money? Custom experience, etc., etc. So these are all things to bear in mind. And of course, if you're developing a portfolio career, you have more of an opportunity to take control of your time, energy, and money. Now, let me be very honest with you. There's going to be a polarized sort of beginning, okay? And I say that to say it may be difficult at the beginning. You're going to have to spend a lot of time, energy, and money on making sure that you do eventually get to a stage where it smooths out. For some people, it never gets there. But if you are smart enough or you find the right opportunities, you can get there. This is a couple of years in the making in terms of getting to a point where you're really, really bossing it. Yes, the money may come in quicker, more than most relative to what you're doing now, but there will be bumps along the road potentially as well. So bear this in mind. So the real transformation from employee to consultant, what does that specifically look like? Now, I could talk about, energy and developing a certain mindset, which is your established set of attitudes and all that kind of stuff there. I'm not going to do that. You can watch previous videos that I've spoken about on my contracting playlist in relation to that. What I will say is that you need to be extremely clear of these 4 things. Number 1, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay, and why? Maybe why is not necessary. Actually, why is important? Why are you trying to solve this problem? What need does it solve? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, who has this problem? Who's the ideal audience? It could be a hiring manager. It could be some people on your social media. It could be people within your circle. You may have had evidence from things that you've done in your previous work experience. Who has this problem? Who are you trying to solve? Understand the demographics, the important demographics. Understand their psychographics. So how do they think? Understand their consumerist behavior. How do they spend their money? What do they spend their money on? The third thing is, okay, how do you help them solve this problem? What does that look like specifically? And fourth, how do you articulate that you can solve this problem effectively? Those 4 things are the most important things that you can focus on. Before you start thinking about anything else, I'm telling you, you have to answer those 4 things effectively. So what's the problem? Who are you helping? How do you help them? How do you articulate that you can help them well? Simple. And you have to evidence this stuff. Do you have previous experience? Do you need to work with people for free initially? Do you need to sort of understand what the competitors are doing, put that into Notebook LM and get sort of the key themes? What do you need to do to get that edge? What research do you need to do? What do you need to sort of test? Do you need to do a minimum viable product or minimum viable service? What do you need to do? Once you understand that stuff, then you can start thinking about, okay, cool. I need to test this. Okay, I've spoken about MVS or MVP. Do you do this alongside your work? You could do this, okay? You could do this alongside your work to see if you get some attention. Maybe you use content to support whether this works. Maybe you speak to a hiring manager or consultants, okay? Or ex-work colleagues or whatever it may be to see if there is demand for what it is that you're looking for. And you can see this demand if you're a conservative contractor or consultant on something like CV Library, JobServe, all of these other things as well to understand. Maybe you want to check open free marketplaces as well. So of course, there are different types of consulting I've spoken about before. You got ones that rely on sort of government contracts or private organization contracts via procurement portals. Okay, you can subcontract people to help you, whatever it may be. You've also got via an agency. Okay, so you can do it that way where they can bring you on. You can also work under another consultancy firm, okay, and they can bring you on as a consultant. You can also be in a position where you have certain criteria that is matched as a compliant, okay, or of high standard, and so they can bring you through a procurement route, but you're still a solo consultant. You can do it that way. Again, there's marketplaces like Upwork as well. I think people per hour is the same thing. Juno is a UK thing for outside IR35 contracts. And there's many other things. You can use Perplexity and or ChatGPT to find out more information around this. Decide what it is that you're doing, and that helps you determine your plan. You need to also understand your policies in terms of leaving. So is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Do you need to talk to your line manager? Do you need to send them an email? When is it triggered? Do you have 3 to 6 months worth of saving? Do you care about that? Do you have that in a cash ISA somewhere that you can draw on if need be? Develop a plan. What does your strategy and plan look like? Okay, the strategy is dependent upon the analysis that you do. So that's the market stuff. Then with that analysis, you really determine, okay, what are the steps in order for you to execute, and then you execute. Maybe you want to do a thing where you don't leave straight away, but you leave in the next 6 to 12 months. Obviously, the market has different conditions, okay? So when it comes to like end of January to like May, that's when people like to spend more money, naturally, okay? And then you've got between the end of May to like throughout summer, everyone's on holiday. It's more about entertainment, having fun, all of that kind of stuff there. So if you're within that space, that's good. And then, you know, from like, let's say end of September to like the beginning of December, yes, there may be hit and miss opportunities. And then, you know, December to like, you know, mid-January, it's a bit dry. So you have to understand how the seasons work and what makes sense for you in terms of jumping in. But you have to know your market. The labor markets, the economic markets, the investing cycle, the politicals, they all kind of link in terms of how people spend their money. So really think deeply about this stuff. So once you have all of this in mind, you can start thinking about what preparations do you need? What tools do you need? What platforms do you need? Do you need support from AI? Do you need templates? You can do all of this stuff. This is what it takes. This is what it takes, my friends, in order for you to position yourself to be prepared to jump on and start your own consultancy. Question: what's your biggest reason for wanting to escape the 9 to 5? I'd love to know your thoughts below, because if you comment below, other people will comment below, and then we can see, okay, we're both feeling this thing. Maybe we become accountability buddies, as an example, or maybe we can support each other. Of course, if you want help, then we can sit down, we can have a discovery call. I can understand your needs better. You can understand whether I can support you or whether you think I can. And then we can, you know, work together over a number of weeks to help you build this, okay? Anyway, let's move on. Is now the right time? It may be. It may be. It may be the right time. And you know this based on, have you got the savings in place? What does your specific market say, okay? Are you getting validation from your side hustle if you set up your side hustle and do all the things that I spoke about before? Are you recognized as somebody who is the go-to person, so to speak? Like, do you feel like you could get easy work if you were just to transition? Are people kind of doing that already with you and kind of pushing you to do that? Bear all of this stuff in mind. That gives you an idea of whether now is the right time to start, so to speak. So I've spoken about the steps that you need. I'm not going to go through this again because I feel like I've done this already. But sometimes, like even with content, you can get validation that you have the audience. Remember, I learned this from a guy called Miles Beckler, okay? And he basically has this thing called the ATM system, Audience, Trust, Monetise. Do you have the audience, which is basically the market? That's what I talk about. Can you develop trust, i.e. can you evidence that you provide value to them? So you have to understand what value looks like to them, and value looks like solving their problem, or at least talking about it, okay, and evidencing it as well. And monetize, based on that, do you know how to articulate that value so that you can monetize? That's essentially what it is. So ATMs are great. I think Daniel Priestley has something called chaos: concept, audience, offer, and then I want to say sales. That's it. So there are different ways to look at it. Think about what makes sense for you. Bonus tip. So what is the cost of you waiting? What does the delay look like in terms of money? Let me give you an example, okay? So let's say, for example, you are wanting to do a conservative contract outside of I-35. They land you a 6-month contract. You take it straight away, okay? So you've already handed in your notice. You take it straight away. Because you're a director in this instance, in this example, you're earning £1,000 a day. This is an example, don't get gassed. And you are, let's say, for example, you work Monday to Friday because that's what you've decided to do. It's 20 day working week within the month. So that's roughly going to be £20,000. That's over 6 months. Then that will be £120,000. But of course, you get ill, you get sick. There's taxes. So let's just take off £40,000. Okay, let's take off 33% of that money. Okay, and you're going to be ending up with £80,000. You've made £80,000 in 6 months, which means your potential earning potential in 12 months is £160,000. Okay. Now, of course, it may be more, it may be less, depending on circumstances. The market may be crazy. They may let you go early. There's all of this stuff that could happen. Yes, you don't have the same benefits, but you have to develop your own benefits and be your financial manager. But the point we made is that is the opportunity cost, because it's possible for that to happen. It's very possible. Okay, if you're in that niche, you're director level, all of that kind of stuff there. So when you work it out that way, Versus what you have right now, scenario two is you don't decide to do it and you wait for 6 months. You've lost £80,000 potentially, 80 to 120. You won't get the full 120 because of taxes and stuff, but you've lost out on that opportunity. So that gives you some perspective in terms of what is possible, what isn't possible, etc., etc. So to summarize, really and truly, there's a lot going on that's making us feel a bit rubbish at the moment, and so it's making us want more meaningful and deeper work that aligns to what we want to do. There isn't a sense of loyalty right now, and a lot of things is being disrupted by AI technology and people just taking the move, like taking the decision to actually do their thing. And organizations are accepting them because we've seen an increase in consultancy and contractor spend when it comes to this stuff. And so we need to lean into the portfolio career, create our career, and start building the steps in order for us to move towards something that makes sense for us. We have to be very clear about, okay, what problem needs to be solved, who are we helping, how do we help them, and specifically, how do we articulate that value? How do we articulate this? Because if you can sort of like validate this in many different ways, okay, and get the evidence that you need, okay, have that niche sort of like offer that makes sense for the market, then you have more confidence to grab onto that opportunity cost that you may have missed previously before. So that was a lot. That was a lot of me talking. But of course, if you want to connect with me and just get up to speed with all of this stuff, then connect with me on LinkedIn. Obviously, subscribe to my YouTube channel and other socials. It's all the same, Michael Tabirade. And of course, I think it's really important for you to just take the stuff on board because there is an opportunity. 2025 feels like a dunya year. I'm not going to lie to you. However, the opportunity comes in the fact that this is where you can build your foundations, because when things are rubbish, this is where people thrive. People were making a crazy money during 07 to 09 during the whole sort of like housing crisis, financial crisis, etc., etc. The dot-com boom is another opportunity where people made the money. More recently, in during the COVID years, again, that was an opportunity where people did that. They capitalized on this stuff. This is another sort of like capitalization moment. Maybe because of the tariffs, maybe because of all of this other stuff, maybe because of changes in policy. But if you have the strength, if you have the experience, you have the confidence, then go for it. Go for it, my friends. Okay, I've given you a neat sort of like roadmap. You can go back to this video, watch it, break it down, write notes, do whatever you need to do, okay, to really understand, and then go wherever you need to go to get more understanding, and then take action. Have a bit of a plan. Okay, I know everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, but in the same breath, there is an opportunity here, my friends. If you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers, consulting, contracting, soft economics, anything centered around my world, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.